eBay ninjas, redistribution specialists, or whatever you call yourselves in the reselling world. This is episode number 104 of eBay the Right Way. Today's date is March 15th. The Ides of March are upon us. My guest today is Marlene in Oklahoma. I call her the horse lady. There are no announcements this week, so let's jump, or should I say gallop, into the conversation with Marlene.
Hello, listeners. We have Marlene with us today, and I call her the horse lady, and she'll tell you why. So how are you this morning, Marlene?
I'm doing great, Suzanne. It's a beautiful day here. I saw the first red robin this morning in my front yard.
Oh, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Good for you. I saw a male cardinal on my bird feeder yesterday. First thing when I got up, and I thought, that's a good sign.
Absolutely. We had 8 deer in the front yard, 8 does with 1 baby. Yeah.
Well, tell everybody where you're located and what kind of residence you have.
I'm at the Ward Ranch right now. We're coming live from the Ward Ranch, Overbrook, Oklahoma. Overbrook is in southern Oklahoma. It is actually an hour and a half north of Dallas, Fort Worth, and an hour and a half south of Oklahoma City.
Okay.
So the couple of things that we're known for is a real small ranch community, Overbrook is, but we're less than 30 minutes from the largest casino in the world.
Oh.
It's Windstar Casino, and it is owned by the Chickasaw Indian tribe. And it's not only the largest casino in the United States, but it's the largest casino in the U.S., square footage wise.
Okay.
It's really spread out. And we're about 30 minutes from the largest lake in Oklahoma for recreational purposes called Lake Murray.
Okay.
The biggest thing I would think that we're known for in this area is this is the epicenter of American quarter horses. There are more American quarter horses in this part of the country than any other part of the country. And even the people from this area, like in Ardmore, which is the town just north of us where we go to get your groceries and shop at Walmart and whatnot, they don't even know that.
Okay.
Ardmore was known more for oil. But
oil.
Yes, and a very rich oil base there.
Okay.
So, but the quarter horses came into the area, and there are more ranches in this part of the country that raise, breed, train, show, and sell quarter horses in the Western discipline, which would be like reining, which is what we're into, cutting, working cow horse, roping, and various things like that. It's all Western disciplines. So that's what brought us here.
Okay.
And I lived in Atlanta for over 30. Well, we live in a metro area of Atlanta. You probably know the town, Cumming, Georgia.
Yes, very familiar.
I think you've got a family member that lives in that area.
Yes, I've got some family there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we lived in that area for over 30 years. And we came out here to buy a horse and ended up buying a ranch for our vacation home. So that's how we ended up here. So this is the Ward Ranch. It's the home of Sagebrush Riz, who is a really well-known stud that is very good in the reining world. He earned us over $80,000 in earnings and performances during his lifetime.
Oh my.
So he is second king to Elvis that's in the barn. Elvis is definitely the king.
And they know me because you played this podcast in the barn.
They know your voice. I have a really great Bluetooth speaker that my husband bought to put in the barn. And every Wednesday morning, we listen to you. Unless I've got to run into town for something. And I usually try to play your podcast sometime on Wednesday just to stay up to date on it. So.
Well, yes. How are they going to feel when it's your voice coming over the speaker?
No, I can't wait. I can't wait. But we have
to report back on that.
Right now we have 5 quarter horses, 1 standard donkey, 3 cats, 2 dogs, and 2 human beings.
My, okay. And how many acres is your ranch?
238 acres.
Okay.
And we keep it, we grow Bermuda hay, and we have lots of ponds, as they call it out here. They don't call them lakes, they call them ponds.
Mm-hmm.
Those are fully stocked with fish, so we fish out here. We keep trails cut year round, so I love to trail ride. And so we trail ride and we ATV and we ride mountain bikes. So it's really an outdoorsy recreational area that it's our vacation place. We don't have to go anywhere,
Sounds like a dream. Really. You have everything you need.
Yeah, Suzanne, it is truly, we worked very hard to get here.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that with you, but we are elated to be here. We love it, and it's just a peaceful place to be, and so much better than Metro Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. So you weren't always a horse lady. You had a corporate background.
Yes, I did. I got a degree in journalism from Georgia State. I think
you did. Okay, I was there for a little while too.
Yes, I attended college at night while I worked full time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to work my way into the position of vice president of marketing for National Bank of Georgia. Do you remember them?
Absolutely. NBG. Yeah.
We do, exactly. So, and I happened to take on that role at the time that they had sold out to a Saudi Arabian. Dr. Gaith Barone purchased the bank. And with it came a lot of negative publicity because the people from Georgia didn't like the fact that the other people didn't know him anymore.
Right.
So I had a lot of exposure to the press and the media, television cameras and newspapers and that. But I parlayed that position into another position with a bank that was the first to open a grocery store and a supermarket. Do you remember Heritage Bank, Suzanne?
I don't. So they were the first to have branches in the grocery store.
Correct. So I did all the marketing and planning for that. And then I left banking and got into computer software to the financial institutions. And I ran the Southeast for a couple of computer companies and basically traveled for 10 or 12 years and had fun doing that. My last job was actually with the division of Mellon Bank out of Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
And I covered the Southeast for them. Sometimes I actually had to go up to New York and over to Texas. So wherever they needed me, I went. But we were selling ATM and debit processing so that when you put your card into the ATM, our software took over to do the transaction. And the host server is in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And basically, the way it works, the processing company would charge a processing fee. So it was a competitive environment, but it was a lot of relationships that we did to business. So I knew a lot of the bankers in the Southeast. And so basically I would call on banks, but I had a great idea, Suzanne, and that was I started seeing that in casinos, they had ATMs. And so I had Florida as my territory, and I'm from Florida. I grew up in the Panhandle.
Okay.
I love getting back down there so I could go visit my parents or whatever. So anyways, I realized that the Seminoles were starting to build a lot of large casinos and put ATMs in it. So I had a big discussion with my boss back at corporate headquarters that we ought to look at processing transactions for the Indian nations that have these casinos. So they agreed, and I ended up closing the largest deal in the company's history by getting the Seminole Indian tribes business for all of their casinos in Florida. Now, this goes back quite a few years because I haven't worked in over 22 years.
Okay.
I quit working before I was 50.
Good for you.
Yes. And I give all the credit to my husband because I have to tell you what happened with him. But anyways, that particular deal garnered me the top salesperson of the year. And I was the first female.
Wow. That is fantastic. Well, I knew when we first connected 2019 and you joined the Premium Library and you would send in some questions. And I knew from your emails, you were very educated. You could write very well and you explained everything very well. And I was like, this lady's either got a writing degree or journalism or something, because You just were very concise, yet explained everything well. And I just, you can tell by reading people's emails sometimes, like, oh, what's their background? Oh, yeah. So
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because I'll give a big part of the credit for learning that, the ability to write and communicate and not be combative, but get the message across. When I was in the marketing department at NBG, we would get letters about various issues. And the president asked me to take over all letter writing to customers regarding whatever it was they were upset with. So I was called the Consumer Affairs Coordinator. So
okay.
we communicate to the public about NBG's position and why we did this, and I'm sorry that it wasn't what you wanted. So I learned compassion, I guess you could say, and yet still be able to explain the knowledge and the reason for different things. So,
and that comes in handy with eBay, whether it's writing a listing or corresponding with customers. It's wonderful when you can transition that experience into your eBay business.
And I have had to, yes.
So, well, let's segue into that. How did you get started with eBay? What was the tipping point that pushed you into eBay?
It would be the move. See, we, like I said, we lived in Atlanta, Forsyth County, Cumming, Georgia, for over 30 years.
Okay.
We both worked. We had a horse property there. So we were into horses in Atlanta, but basically we both worked all the time. So my husband's career was always in the software technology world, where it was high tech, and it was typically venture startup companies, either Austin or Silicon Valley. And he was responsible for building their Southeast sales territory. So in late 2000, we came out here to buy a couple of horses for competition because we wanted to compete in the reining world. And we really liked it out here. It was a slower pace, beautiful land, unbelievable sunsets, unbelievable sunrises, and just the ambiance of being around other Western people with a similar interest and who like horses. So we bought the ranch, and for 15 years almost, right at 15 years, we would travel back and forth from Atlanta to Cumming multiple times a year. We got a horse trailer, we load up our horses.
You mean from Cumming to Oklahoma?
Yes, Cumming to Oklahoma.
Okay, right.
And so we would load the horses up. We have a living quarter in that trailer. So we would just take our time coming across the country to get here. And when we got here, we basically would just go to horse shows and just kick back and enjoy the environment, But then we always had to go back because we were still working. Well, in about 2001, my husband's company IPO'd. It was an initial public offering, and it went public. And it was like hitting a home run in the ninth inning with the bases loaded. That's
right.
So, and it happened to happen about the same time that 9/11 was going on. So it was just a time to stop and reflect, because he flew out of Hartsville Airport every week, 45 weeks out of the year for 25 years. So he was always on a plane, and he would be in 5 different states in a week. And when 9/11 happened, we just happened to be in Colorado on vacation with no cell connection and no TV in our cabin. So we were not aware of what had happened in New York and the Pentagon. So when we went into town to check our voicemails, my husband found his voicemail boxes full of messages asking if he was okay. And that's how we learned that something had happened, because on a typical day, he would have been on a plane. It could have very well been. He was working with the Pentagon at that time in his sales capacity. So anyways, it was time to reflect on life and say, what do we want to do? So at that time, he said, I'm going to take a sabbatical for about 2 months. And that was 22 years ago. So I worked for another year, and then I consummated the deal with the Seminoles, and I officially retired. And then we said, well, and again, this is back in early 2000. So we drove back and forth for about 14, 15 years. And finally made the decision we had to let one of the properties go. The horses were getting older. It was hard for them to handle that long of a journey. It's 1,000 miles.
Oh my.
Yeah. So anyways, at that point, we decided to sell Forsyth County, the horse property there, and come here full time, which ended up being about 2014.
Mhm.
So we acclimatized this big barn that was built out here that the original guy was going to use for hay. So we put in a second story and put in air conditioning, heating, and all that. And we brought about 100 boxes here from Atlanta. I tried to sell everything, Suzanne, in Atlanta. I had open houses. This was before Marketplace took place on Facebook.
Uh-huh.
So I would just put on my Facebook page what I had to sell. And people would call me and say, can I come by and see it? And I said, yeah. And so, I mean, multiple days. We had 30 days to get out of our house. Now and my husband and I have been married for 48 years. So this year, in 2014.
Congratulations.
But 40 years of stuff in our house, and it was a big house. It was over 5,000 square feet, and it was just stuffed with stuff. I have inheritances from family members, and all that. So we tried to get rid of it. I donated a lot. I donated a whole lot to the women's shelter and to the Kidney Foundation. I gave a lot of stuff away, but I still ended up with, like I said, probably 120 boxes that came this way. So those are in that barn. And for 3 or 4 years, we'd walk out and say, what are we going to do with this? And we don't have children. So I had no one to leave that burden to. And I finally said, I'm going to read the eBay book that my husband bought me for Christmas. He had bought it for me, I don't know, probably 2012 or something.
Okay.
And I sat down and read it, and I started doing YouTubes, and I found you
Okay.
on the YouTube channel. And so I started watching you and just trying to figure out, okay, how do you do this? And I thought, well, I might as well dive in and see what happens. And the first item I sold was a handheld language translator database. And it went to Puerto Rico. And, I know how you talk about how people are so afraid to sell here, there, and everywhere. I sold to Puerto Rico on my first one because I didn't know any difference. But
well, I mean, it's within the United States Postal Service, so it's not international, and you just print the label like for anything else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my husband and I both were surprised that something so obscure would sell. And so the next day I said, I'm going to try these. You sure you don't want them? No, I don't want them. And it was a wireless headset we had bought, thinking we would need them here. We're in a barn dominion. It's connected to the barn.
Oh, that's fun.
Maybe we would need them. So, and we never wore them. So I sold those. And then the journey began. And so I've sold year to date. I guess I should say that was 2017 when I started selling in August. And this marks my 6th year, and I've sold 629 items.
Congratulations.
And that doesn't sound a lot to some of you folks, I know that. But for me, it's just all about going out there and trying to rehome things that have followed me through my life. And I never know what I'm going to find, Suzanne. It's a joyful experience when I open a box and all of a sudden there's something from my grandmother. I go, oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
Right. It's a treasure hunt in your own home. And you even would, some of your emails were about, you got the BOLO book and you found some of the things in your own stuff that you didn't even know you had. It was just, you were unpacking, or maybe you're like, oh, I think I have one of those. No. And I don't know if you searched for it or just waited for it to pop up. But you were saying, I'm going through 40 years of possessions and inheritances. And so you have your own ready-made, I guess, thrift store, estate sale, whatever, going on in your barn, where you just open a box and start listing.
Exactly. And I never know what today will bring. And I have opened some things and I just can't bear yet to let it go, especially something from my mom or my grandmother. So I still have those things. I've got unbelievable, beautiful hand crocheted and knitted afghans and pillows and stuff like that.
Well, and you mentioned something that was on the calendar this month, that on my eBay calendar that you have. What is that item?
Well, and the oven, the little oven that you bake in as a child.
The Easy Bake Oven.
Bake oven, yeah. Got it in 1962 for Christmas.
Because I think the calendar entry talks about the date that was invented, and it was in 62, I think.
Yeah.
And you're like,
I was
one of those.
I was born in 52, so I was 10 years old when I got that, and I loved it. I cooked on it every day. It hasn't weathered the storm too well, I'll say that.
Well, and I had one too, a cheaper reproduction in the, I guess, 70s. And that stuff tasted terrible. It was just fun to make it. It's just fun to cook these little bitty cakes.
I agree.
So what were some of the things that you found in your stuff that either were in the BOLO book or not, just things that you uncovered? I guess Suzanne Keen in Texas calls it an archaeological dig. She's through her mom's stuff. It's just, you never know what you can find.
There's a couple of things that you have identified in the BOLO book, but I have not yet sold. I'll say. And one of them is the old Royal typewriter.
Okay.
One was a Tom Thumb. And mine, I believe, is Royal, and it still works. And I actually still have the paper that you put down in there to type over to correct, and then they'll correct the tape.
Yes.
Rolls of the corrected tape. I just am not ready to let go of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still there. Your BOLO book had these beautiful teak-looking trays that have inlays in them. I've got a number of those.
Those are Curach trays.
Yes.
They're like black lacquer with the inlaid wood and like a gold metallic filigree type. I mean, it's not real gold, but those were very hot in the 60s, for barware. That was a big thing.
Yes. I got mine probably in Jim's career. The salespeople that were successful were rewarded with sales trips, all expense paid trips.
Mm-hmm.
So we have been to Switzerland, Germany, Italy, Puerto Rico, Bermuda, Hawaii, and I could just go on. And anytime I go to those places, I would buy things not knowing that, but I have a number of those like that from various trips. And I collect little music boxes.
Mm-hmm.
That are like trinket boxes or jewelry boxes. And I have those from all over. Wherever we traveled, I would pick one up. One of my most beautiful ones from Switzerland. And it's a chalet. And you open it up and it plays a Swiss tune.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't gotten ready to part with that yet. But, one day I need to.
Well, and it's the rehoming part, because there's nobody after you to deal with it. So what's going to happen if you don't deal with all of your possessions? I mean, whoever you leave your estate to may just come in and donate everything. You don't know.
Go to the landfill.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I know.
My grandmother was from Wales, and she had the most beautiful Welsh accent, and she was a really sweet lady. It's my mom's mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually named after her. Her name is Jessie, and my first name is Jessie.
Okay.
But she had a lot of little idiosyncrasies, and one of those is if you spent the day with her at 4:00, you stopped for tea.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, I have never drank coffee. I'm a hot tea person.
Mm-hmm.
And I need just to be peaceful and get my wits about me. I'll sit down and have a cup of hot tea. Well, she gave me 2 beautiful teapots. I have not sold those, but they're there. And I started a collection of mini teapots. And I bought those from all over the world, but I have now sold all of them.
Okay.
2 years ago, so they're all gone. But yeah, I mean, your BOLO book has been something that just, once I see the image, that helps me. I can hear you tell me this, but if I physically see it, it sticks in my mind, like the Daisy Kingdom patterns.
Okay.
I tell you about that.
Sure. Tell us about that.
I found at the rummage sale that I went to, I found 2 shoe boxes full of patterns, and I bought all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a couple of Daisy Kingdoms. So I listed it, and I now have a category in my store called sewing patterns, and I'm
Okay.
them off for somewhere around $7 to $10, just because of the volume of them, and I've made my money back. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I woke up out of the desk and Suzanne said something about Daisy Keaton. And I delisted real quick, and I relisted it and sold it at $5 less than what I was wanting. I think I sold it for 25. I asked
Mm-hmm.
for 9. So yes, it has come in. It's triggered my mind at different times if there are things that you have shared with us in the BOLO group.
Now, you posted a teapot, a different one. Tell us about that, because it's sold for a good price.
Yes. Well, I don't, like you said, my treasures and my sourcing comes from here on the ranch, whatever's in those boxes. But I keep listening to you all about you all going out and sourcing. It just sounds like it'd be so much fun.
Treasure hunting is for anybody, no matter how much stuff you already have. You might still love treasure hunting.
Well, I think I do, but I've got to control it now because I've got to really focus on my stuff. But I have a friend who is the curator of the museum in the county just south of us. And she had seen on my eBay messages, and not Facebook, that I was involved with eBay. And so she sent me a message and said, my church is going to have a rummage sale. Would you be interested in coming to it? I said, no, I don't need anything like that. I have plenty of stuff. Anyways, she continued to say things to me about it. And she's just a lovely lady. And so I said, okay, I'll come. So I went there on a Friday, and she met me at the door. And she said, Marlene, I have earmarked some things I think you might be interested in. And I respect her opinion because she has put the entire Love County Museum together on her own. And we toured that museum. And we were in there for an entire day looking at stuff. But she's a wealth of knowledge. Well, a lot of the stuff she was showing me, I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't think I want to worry with that because it's shipping type stuff. So anyways, I continued to look, and she pointed out that Knowles Mobile boomerang pattern. And it's semi-popular on eBay. You'll find 5 or 6 sellers that have the plates or the bread plates or the bowls or whatever. She had the coffee pot. So it was the coffee pot, 8 plates, bowls, saucers. And I said, well, what do you want for that? And she said, $5. So I said, okay, I'll take it. So she packaged it all up, and I brought it home, and it sat in my, dead space, whatever you call this, it wasn't out in the barn. It was actually inside the house from October until January.
Okay.
Molly, you really need to do something with this. So I thought, let's look at the coffee pot. So I took it out and just started photographing it. And it was beautiful. It showed up so beautiful in the photographs. And wow, this is a beautiful piece. Then I started doing my research. Suzanne, I couldn't find it. It was nowhere. I did Google imaging. I did replacement. I did Worthington, I think is the name. I went, is that the name? Worthington?
It's Worth Point.
Worth Point. I went everything I could think of. Nobody had the coffee pot. Nobody. And so I thought, well, gosh, I need to list this. So I put it on auction. And I thought on auction that you had to put a buy now price. I know now that you didn't.
Right.
But I'm very happy with what I made on it. So I did put a buy now price of $279. I started the bids at $200.
Mm-hmm.
I listed on a Thursday, and on Friday morning, I finished listening about midnight on Thursday. On Friday morning, I had 9 views and 4 watchers. So I thought, well, this is interesting. And I'd never done an auction before. So I kind of thought, that's probably not bad. And within 1 hour of getting up, my cash register rang on my phone.
You got a ka-ching.
I got a ka-ching, and she bought it for the buy now price. And
Oh,
I'm
really?
just so excited. She bought, because it was a 10-day auction, so it had just begun. And so she didn't want to wait to see what the bidding would go to. So it sold for $279, plus she paid close to $25 for shipping. She was in California.
Mm-hmm.
So I immediately emailed her or sent her a message on eBay that I would be boxing it up over the weekend because I knew it would take time to get it secure and whatnot, and that I would mail it on Monday. And so the original box I had chosen to put it in ended up being too small because I wanted to put more and more bubble wrap. And I love your ideas of noodles.
Pool noodles. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, they're great.
They're great. Anytime you've got a handle, you need something for that void. And anyways, I had this thing just packed with all sorts of bubble wrap and whatnot. And so the box got bigger. So I realized that my shipping calculations that I had shown in my listing was for a smaller box. And $25 took care of it, priority mail with insurance. Well, when I upped the size of the box, it jumped from $25 to $44.
Was it because it was oversized?
Well, it was just because it was bigger. And
just bigger.
In California.
Right.
So it weighed a little bit more. So I had to immediately begin trying to get what was I going to do. So I chose FedEx. FedEx could do it for $17. So I boxed it up and drove it into town that day. And Suzanne, that was the day that we got hit with the ice storm.
Oh, no.
So there was nobody on the road, and this parking lot was totally empty at the FedEx place. And so I gingerly walked in there holding this thing, hoping I didn't slip on ice. And I said, FedEx will be running today. She said, oh, yeah, they'll be here at about 2. So I left it with her and came home and immediately get on it to start tracking it. And it didn't. Bottom line is FedEx did not come to Ardmore for 5 days.
Oh, no.
So I was worried that the lady in California, my buyer, would think I was some scam artist. So,
right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of money to spend. So I immediately started sending her messages to say, hey, the weather is such that they did not pick up today, but your item is safe and secure. And I gave her the name of the store and the name of the owner and the location. I said, it's safe in that store. And she was just a delightful lady. I have met the nicest lady. To me, she's now a friend. So she opened up and said, hey, don't worry about it. I understand. My mother lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She said, and I have friends in Texas, Arkansas, and Oklahoma, and I'm watching the weather because I'm worried about them. She said, so don't worry, everything will be fine. So I did ask her, I said, may I ask why you bought this coffee pot? And she said, I saw this line of this pottery, China, in 2015. My husband and I did, out here in California. We saw it at an antique store and the guy would not sell it to us. She said, not the coffee pot, but a set of dishes. She said, so since 2015, I've been buying pieces of this china piecemeal. And in 2018, my husband and I got married, and that became my wedding china.
Okay.
She said, I have never in my life seen a coffee pot. And she said, I could not wait to get my hands on it. So do you remember I put the picture of her dishes, her entire set on your Facebook page? She mentioned that once she got the coffee pot, and she was just so excited. So now she has a complete set of dishes with a creamer. She did tell me she's still looking for a sugar bowl, but nobody can get the sugar bowl to her there without there being chips on it. So she was very happy that my coffee pot arrived with no chips safely in there. And what was funny, it finally began to move on Friday of that week. And so I sent her a message and said, we should pick a beverage of our choice tonight to toast to each other and cheers that it'll be picked up and delivered to you on Monday, which was the day. And so she sent me a picture of her cocktail that she had fixed herself sitting on her kitchen counter and said, cheers to Monday. So, and then me that really nice feedback. So yeah, I mean, I'm hooked. I just thought that was the coolest thing to find something worth so much. And that's the kind of stuff that my friend pointed out to me at the rummage sale. That's where I got the patterns.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's where I don't know if you saw it. I posted a bunny rabbit. There's a beautiful, I think it's a Fritz and Floyd bunny rabbit pulling an egg in a cart, and I paid like $1 for it and sold it for $30. And the lady said that she had bought 2 on eBay and they all arrived broken.
Mm-hmm.
So I double packaged that, but extra cardboard and bubble wrap. Mine arrived safely, and she gave me positive feedback. So that rummage sale has been quite successful for me. I've got dishes right now listed that were made in 1943 that are in mint condition that I got from that rummage sale.
Oh, well, you have a good friend pointing all that out for you.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and I think people forget sometimes, especially if you ship a lot of items, that there's always a person on the other end that is going to receive this and open this. And like with your coffee pot, it's exactly what they've been looking for. And you get the honor of being that person to bring them joy through what might just seem like, physical items, but there's just so much nostalgia and memories. We forget that sometimes, and it might be on items that you wouldn't even think someone could be nostalgic about. We get it with the stuffed animals, like that was your favorite little friend when you were a child, but it could be anything that reminds you of another person.
Absolutely.
Or your past. Yeah.
I had one other thing that was pretty interesting. It didn't come from the church sale. It came from my treasures. I sold a Xavier Roberts doll known as Little People or Cabbage Patch. Remember that?
Oh, of course. That comes out of Georgia. What's the town in Georgia?
Maybe Cleveland.
Cleveland, right. It's kind of up in the mountains, but yeah, the Cabbage Patch.
Babyland General is the name of the
hospital. And you go to the little pretend hospital and get your baby.
Well, back in the 80s, NBG had a promotion that if you opened a checking account, you got it had to be a checking account of a certain amount. You got your choice of a free Xavier Roberts signed doll.
Okay.
And so at the end of the promotion, we still had dolls in inventory. And my boss said, Marlene, pick one out. So this has been a great campaign. It worked well. You just pick one. Well, there was one there. Her name was Athena, and she was the only African American. And she was beautiful. Long hair with pigtails, dressed in a brilliant yellow outfit. Her little tiny had Xavier Roberts' autograph on it. So and basically, she was just displayed in my guest bedroom, my mom and dad or whatever. She was just that nobody ever played with her. She was beautiful. And I forgot even had it. And I opened up a box, and there she was. And I had wrapped her in plastic. She used to be in my cedar closet. Most of my stuff that treasures I would put in cedar closet in Atlanta. So anyways, I sold her for $400 to a gentleman in Australia. And I knew enough about the doll to know that there's a lot of history to them. They're more valuable if they can be adopted. So I never adopted her. But typically those people who really were into them, they would go to Babyland General and get adoption papers and have their name on it with a signature. Mm-hmm. So I contacted Babyland General. This was in like 2018, and had an amazing conversation with them. They actually remembered the NBG promotion from back in the 80s. And I said, listen, here's what's going on. She said, well, I can get you the certificate of adoption, and you could pass that on to the new buyer, and they could technically adopt her. So at that point, I hired a woman that I found on the internet that evaluated and gave you a value for your Cabbage Patch doll. And you sent pictures. You paid her like $40. You sent her bunches of pictures, and she asked you 100 questions about it. And she actually priced this doll at somewhere around $300.
Mhm.
Her. And so I just posted, I listed it $100 higher, sold it for 400. That was at that point, that was my largest sale, $400. Went to Australia. So
Good for you.
yeah. My other really high sale was, and you'll remember this, the Braves in 1995 were the World Series champions, right?
Right.
Well, I saved that newspaper from the Atlanta institution that had them on the front. Well, thank goodness in 2021, they won the World Series again. The night they won the World Series, I listed that paper, and by that next morning, I had sold that old newspaper for $80 to a gentleman in Dunwoody.
Oh, good for you. Now, Dunwoody's where I was raised. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And usually those newspapers, most of them aren't worth anything. The front page, all the big events in history, like most of them aren't worth anything. So you timed that perfectly. That was very smart.
And we also at that I had bought for my husband a leather Atlanta Braves jacket when they won the '92 World Series. So I said, Jim, you think you're going to wear this again? And he said, probably not. So I sold it like the next day for $175. So
yeah, strike while the iron's hot. Like while these things are going on, you just put it out there. And probably the fact that it was a new listing, when listings are new, they get a little bump in search. So, might have been near the top there. But yeah, exactly what somebody was looking for. That was really smart.
It's fun when those kind of things happen.
So what other kind of sales have you had that were just surprising? Like, I can't believe somebody bought that.
I'll give you the one.
You already know.
In 2017, when I was just starting, I opened up a box from my husband's vanity book at home, the bathroom book.
Okay.
There was a screen that goes on the top of a Remington electric shaver.
Right.
And he doesn't use electric shavers anymore, so that thing, I don't know how old it was, and how long we had it. I sold it. I listed it and sold it. It took about a couple of weeks to sell, but I got $15 for that little old screen that went on a Remington shaver. It just is, to me, it amazes me what people will buy. It's just.
Yeah, and what they're waiting to buy that's not listed yet that somebody has.
Yes.
I know I'm such a stickler for don't have a death pile, get your stuff listed. In your case, it's going to take a long time to get through all that stuff because you're busy with life. In fact, we tried to do this podcast a couple times and you're like, oh, I can't do it. It's horse season or, so we had to figure out what time of year to even do this because you've been so busy with life. But that's what runs through my head is like, what just got donated to the Goodwill up the street that somebody wants? And I get to be the person to go find it because people have alerts set up so that as soon as something's listed, they're notified or they're just, they need a part for something or, whatever it is, maybe their Vitamix broke yesterday and they need a part today and you might have it and it's not listed yet.
You're so right, Suzanne, because
connecting the haves with the have-nots and it's just a stream of product that's never going to end. We are never going to run out of things to sell.
You have had quite a few people talk about the Big E, the
Levi's Big E, right?
Okay, this one took the cake for me. Growing up, my husband would only wear cutoffs to swim in.
Okay.
And I have a picture of him standing in Hawaii in his Big E Levi cutoffs.
Really?
So, they're boxed up, shipped out to Oklahoma, sitting in the barn. And I opened up a box and there's these jeans. And I thought, So I flipped them up and looked, and by gosh, they're the Big E. So I listed them. And I got $85 for those cutoffs, and they're no bigger than, I mean, they're like 4 inches long, maybe. They're not
Right.
hands. And the guy sent me a message, and he had given them to a girlfriend, apparently. And he was very thrilled with her liking the Big E cutoff shorts. But yeah, it amazes me what will sell and how much it sells for.
Can you tell from the photo? Can you tell they're Big E?
No.
Okay. I was like, if you could, you probably even sell the photo of him wearing them. Blur out his face. Because yeah, like
my dad was a decorated war veteran, World War II. He had Silver Star and a Purple Heart.
Oh my.
And he served in the Pacific Theater. He was in the Philippines and that. And he had lots and lots of pictures of the war. And I've been going through those thinking, if they don't have him in them, and they're like pictures of the villages in the Manila, and pictures of this and that, should I think about selling this? Because you've had some guests on your podcast that say those old pictures sell.
Well, and Julie, who is out in Montana and specializes in postcards, she did talk a little bit about photographs as well. So you just never know till you put them up there.
Yeah.
And you can sell them in lots, so it's not such a tedious process of one by one by one. But people who like history, they love that stuff because this is a tangible piece of history that they can hold in their hand and look at or display, and that's very different than just going online and llooking at pictures. You've got this thing that is very old and is historically significant. That, you can do whatever you want to with it, but I'm sure some collectors would love to get their hands on those.
I need to think on that one because that's a whole box fairy. Those are up here in the house because I don't keep photos out in the barn. I try to keep them up where they are here. But one other thing I was going to tell you, Suzanne, do you remember Wolf cameras?
Absolutely. And in Atlanta, they had those commercials.
Yes.
I think there was a wolf sound in the commercials.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I remember those.
I went to their photography school. Did you?
You did?
I did because I love photography. I love telephoto photography. It's kind of my niche. And so my husband bought me a very nice Canon T5i, Rebel T5i.
Okay.
So, and I take lots of pictures out here, especially of birds and wildlife and the horses and whatnot. But he learned of a camera that was even better for telephoto purposes. And so he wanted to buy me that. And I said, well, then I need to sell this one. Well, I sold the T5i for $550. Fully working. I had all the instructions, the books, it came with the bag and everything. But that was another big sell for me very early in my eBay selling career. So I have actually sold probably 5 cameras. I sold another one for $250.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of the little power shots, Canon power shots.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I've got those. I've got probably 10 more than I can sell. But cameras are just something that we always had because it seemed like every time we were going somewhere, one would break. So we'd go buy another one, or we wouldn't have it with us when we needed it. So we would just pick one up on the road as we were traveling. So cameras sell really well.
And that's interesting because everybody has a camera on their phone, but yet photography people, they like that physical camera that's not just on your phone.
So this is what I use for my eBay photos.
That's nice.
It's the Canon Power Shot.
Uh-huh.
So it has the SIM card.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't clutter my phone with photos for eBay.
Right.
It does, to me, I think the pictures look better. And I pride myself on having good pictures on it.
Oh, yeah, because the only thing between you and the buyer is that screen. And we all know people look at the pictures before they read anything.
And you know what? Let's see, you started your podcast in 2021?
2021 in March, yes.
Okay. One of your very first podcasts, you didn't have guests.
Right. I didn't know what I was going to do with this podcast. I just started talking.
So I was actually listening to you as I was driving into town, and you spoke of the Clorox pen,
Okay.
the gel pen, or the
The
pen,
bleach pens.
the bleach pen.
Right.
They were discontinuing, right? So I went.
Right. At Clorox, I learned from the grocery manager, like Clorox chose their top products to sell during COVID because they were having trouble keeping up with production. So they just stopped producing they picked like 5 products, and the gel pen did not make the cut. So they quit making it.
So I began looking for those. I never could find them ever since that time that you told us that. That was 21, right?
Right.
So of all the things, we went into a little obscure store in a small little town just south of us over the weekend to get some parts for our horse water. And I walk around the corner, and he's got this table set up, and everything on it was clearance. And there were a whole bundle of Clorox bleach gel pens. And I said, "What is this about?" And he said, "Well," he said, "I'm the new owner here." And he said, "I was cleaning out the trailer out back where they store the inventory, and all these things are just back there." He said, I'm bringing them out and getting rid of them. You have them for $2. So I listed two that night, and I sold the 2 for $50 in less than 24 hours. And I still have many left to list.
So are they, so they're not listed yet?
I sold 2. I have one other listed, and then the rest I'll be listing over the next few days. I didn't want to put them all out there at one time.
They're probably going to get more valuable unless Clorox brings them back. So my advice to you is don't wait to list them, because we may find out tomorrow that they're bringing them back, because I mean, people love those things. It's not so much for the product inside, but for the applicator.
Yes.
And so that's the thing with discontinued items, is knowing the window you have. Like, is it discontinued forever, or is it going to come back? And unless it's been, years and years, like, the herbal essence shampoo, the green shampoo, that's discontinued. We all had that in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And the commercial with Eve and the Garden of Eden and all, that's definitely discontinued, never coming back. And it sells for like $100 a bottle. But, if it's more modern times and something is discontinued, it might come back. These days, you never know what's going on with supply issues and all that, as they say, supply chain issues. So I wouldn't sit on those too long.
I won't. Yeah.
You might lose your opportunity if they come back, and then they're not going to be worth as much because there'll be a bigger supply.
Well, there was more listed than I thought there would be.
Really?
Yeah. But they're not all exactly the same.
Right.
So, some of them are probably much older than others. Some look like they have been damaged in water.
Mm-hmm.
The cardboard was all yellow and that. So, I don't know. I will not wait long. And I was happy with that return, like $50, and I'd spent $2. So
that was great. Good for you for paying attention.
Yeah. One thing I find sells really well for me, and I don't really know why, Suzanne, unless it's just he was such a cute dog, but I have had 2 West Highland Terriers. And anything Westie sells well on eBay. And I've sold probably $275 worth of pillows, pictures, candles, sculptures of Westies. Now I have Airedale stuff as well, and it doesn't do as well. We always have had Airedales and Westies. The Airedale stuff doesn't do as well, but for some reason the Westies, he's a little white dog.
Oh yeah. He's on the is it Caesar's dog food?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the general rule is, yes, anything breed specific, dogs or cats, sells well, but then within that there are some that do better than others. And I don't think an Airedale is as popular of a dog, maybe not as many people have that. And
Westies are kind of a little lap dog and carry them around.
Yeah. Well, also, let me say to you the one thing, and I mentioned this to you in a message I sent you about bank memorabilia category.
Yes.
If anyone has anything that is bank related, there is a separate category that is strictly for collectors looking for bank memorabilia. So you may have to pay to have a second category listing, but I have found it to be worth my while to post. Not only, like, I had a canvas tote that came from a bank conference, and I had it listed, of course, in totes, but I put it in the memorabilia thing and I sold it within a week. So just a nugget there, that category, if you have people that collect things, like I have a lot of stuff that came from the bank that I had from marketing days, like clocks and not necessarily pens, but gift sets.
Right.
And the one gentleman that has bought more things from me, more than one thing from me, came from Mellon Bank. And he is a collector of Mellon Bank memorabilia. And that he goes to that category weekly to see if anything new's been listed that's got Mellon Bank's name on it. Unfortunately, I didn't know about that, and I sold a bunch before then. It's like golf balls and cats and stuff like that. But that's just a tidbit to be aware of, that category can help you get more views of your item.
Well, and even if sellers don't want to pay for a second category, you can just go ahead and list it in that bank memorabilia and give it some time. And if it doesn't sell, you can list it in whatever else is appropriate. But I think eBay's getting pretty good about when you're listing something and they suggest the category. Do you see that pop up when you're listing items?
I do, yes.
And usually it's right on target, what it should be. And it's like, oh, I didn't even know there was a category for that.
Yeah.
So good for you. Well, we are getting towards the end here. So I'm going to ask you a loaded question.
Okay.
Many people are in your same situation of, I guess, being the family historian, having all the stuff to go through. And that can be very overwhelming because you just want to do it and have it be done. But, it's going to take a long time. What is your advice to people in your same situation about not getting overwhelmed and working through these items just gradually?
I would say you have to get your mind in a place where you just enjoy the moment. Enjoy the moment of finding that item. As frustrated as you may be, that this is now your responsibility to figure out what to do with this. Look at it as an opportunity that someone else won't have to revisit and rethink the family memories. Times gone by. And just embrace it, make it a joyful event. You'll find too, when you come upon some things, you quickly look it up on either Google or Safari or whatever searching you use or eBay, you find out how much it's worth. So that should be like a little incentive that, great, this is working out, I'm going to keep doing it. Just be patient with yourself. I know that I've reached out to you, Suzanne, saying that I'm just overwhelmed with it when I walk in there sometimes. But you just got to, get your mind in the right place. If this is, my family's history, and I'm going to treasure each month that I have here to look at it, do the research, and hope that I find a really good new home for this item that I no longer need. It still has lots of life to it, has lots of beauty. Just recently, I sold an item to a guy in New York, and it was purchased by us back in the 80s in Colorado. And so he was aware of the history of it. He says, and now its history renews itself. It was a beautiful Southwestern belt buckle. Western Georgia. And he says, it will renew its history here in the New York area. So kind of look at it that way, that it's kind of it's an adventure that you don't know where it's going to end and where that item will go. But until you begin that first step of taking that item out, dusting it off, taking the pictures, you're never going to know. So that's what keeps me going with it. I mean, I really enjoy eBay. It's strictly a hobby, Suzanne.
Mhm.
I know I'm not going to make money on it. Some people might say you don't make enough to make it worth your while, but I've grossed over 25,000 with items that I would have just thrown away. And so, and I'm fortunate I don't have to, I'm not looking for that to be my source of income. But for somebody in my same position, I would just say, enjoy the money.
That's wonderful advice. And you sound like a very responsible custodian of these items. And I think what you said is valid, that we fall in love with the process of this, taking this item, getting it into somebody else's hands. They love it. Everybody wins. I know a lot of people are just driven, like, how many items can I sell? How much money can I make? But there's this underlying process of what all of us are doing, keeping these items out of the landfill and, spreading the joy by putting an item into somebody's hands. And you can't really put a price on that as far as the experience. And, we just love this process. That's what keeps us going. I don't think you can do anything just for the money. You have to love what you're doing. And here you are in retirement, basically. Although you're pretty busy with your horses. You don't look like a retired person to me, but this is a fun hobby that anybody can do on the side.
Yes. And you can pick it up when you're ready and let it go when you don't have time.
Right.
So
exactly.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad we finally connected and did this. And we'll just look for you and all of your amazing sales on the Facebook group.
Thank you, Suzanne. I've enjoyed it.
Me too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you again, Marlene, for making time to come on the podcast. I know I say this on every episode, but it really is a pleasure to meet other sellers face to face. Well, on Zoom face to face, especially sellers I have known online for years. Okay, today's trivia question is about horses, of course. How did horses get to America? Because they are not native to the Americas. Here are a few seconds to think it over. Okay, in the late 1400s, Spanish conquistadors brought European horses to North America, back to where they evolved long ago. At this time, North America was widely covered with open grasslands, serving as a great habitat for these horses. Horses quickly adapted to their former range and spread across the nation. The horses seen in the American West today are descended from a domesticated breed introduced from Europe and are therefore a non-native species and not indigenous. Although many horse lineages evolved in North America, they went extinct approximately 11,000 years ago during the Pleistocene era. So they came over with the Spanish. You might not know that, and now you do. Okay, next week, my guest is my neighbor here in Greenville, Leslie. We met at the first Greenville Resellers Meetup, and she has an amazing story about a painting she found while she was out sourcing for eBay, and it's just going to send chills up your spine when you hear this, because it's just the work of something beyond us humans, how this painting got in her hands and the story behind it. So you want to make sure and tune in for that episode next week. Thank you again for making this podcast part of your week, and make it a profitable and productive day on eBay. Bye, everybody.